Hey guys, welcome back to Hardware Highlights podcast number 4. I'm here with Drew and Luke once again. We're going to be talking about Apple's M1 silicon chips that they've come out with in their new MacBooks and the Mac Mini. This is a really, really, really interesting topic. This is fresh within the past 2 weeks. This has been announced, tested, and really focused on. And once we saw the announcement, it was lofty. A lot of people looked at these benchmarks and was like, this really can't be what they're saying it's going to be. It's too good to be true. It was one of those scenarios where it's too good to be true, and it caused a lot of skepticism in the community. These chips were boasting big numbers that a lot of people couldn't even really believe. But lately, within the past week, people have got their hands on all the different products, the M1 products. They have the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini, all with the M1 chip in. There's very little customization you can really do with it. I think the only things you could do is go from like 8 gigs of RAM to 16, and then upgrade your your storage to like 512 gigs of SSD, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and stuff like that. I think really the only major thing is with a MacBook Air, you can go from a 7 core GPU to an 8 core GPU, which there hasn't been a ton of talk about. It's more seems to be CPU centric. These aren't gaming machines by any means, but they're still boasting some really important and controversial specifications. So a lot of people got their hands on them recently and started doing some testing. And after benchmarks, this is really, really, shocking. People, you know, were seeing that it's true. Their benchmarks they put up on stage were true. These chips are shredding optimized programming. They're getting video renders in record times. They're getting benchmarks that are record highs. And I think one of the biggest thing that stands out here is they're putting this up against the MacBook Air 16 from last year, rocking like an Intel i9, which is a powerful machine, thousands of dollars, extremely expensive machine, and they're putting it right up against the MacBook Air, entry level MacBook Air, that's $1,000. And in many cases, that MacBook is outperforming the 16-inch MacBook from the previous year with an Intel i9. And I think this is a lot like the NVIDIA GPUs that we talked about in our first podcast. How a couple weeks ago, the most expensive and high performance option was incredible. It exceeded all expectations, and all of a sudden they come out with a new generation of stuff, and their cheapest option outperforms the most expensive option from the previous year, which I think really causes a lot of controversy in the community. So, Luke, I'll transition to you. How do you think people feel? If you bought a 16-inch MacBook with an Intel i9 like a month ago, and now you're hearing about this Apple, MacBook Air that's outperforming your PC for a fraction of the cost, how would you feel?
I'd definitely be upset if I just bought that, laptop that, what did you say, a month before, was it?
Yeah, like
Or
about
a
a
year
month
before?
before, a couple weeks. It's been about 2 weeks since this has all come out.
Yeah, you dish out all that money, you expect great performance, and then you hear about this new laptop comes out and it's, you know, off the charts, just breaking all benchmarks and everything. Obviously, I'd be happy to know that there's been improvements with the hardware, but yeah, like I said, I just feel cheated out on the fact that I just dished out all this money and now this new laptop comes out for a fraction of the price and it's outperforming it in every aspect.
Yeah, no, I think that makes complete sense. A lot of people would be upset about it. I know, I personally would be too. I'd feel super unlucky. But what are you supposed to do with the progress of technology? Which it's an interesting point. And same thing to you, Drew. What do you think this means for people? How would you feel if you just went out and bought this, and all of a sudden this MacBook Air comes out of nowhere and is beating it out? What do you think about it?
I would definitely feel cheated, but we have to remember this is Apple we're talking about. This definitely isn't a new model for them. I feel like we see this thing every 6 to 8 months with the new iPhone.
Right.
I mean, they'll release an iPhone, and then all of a sudden, they announce the next one, and it's got 3 cameras, and you're sitting there with 2, and, "Oh, I gotta get the new one, or everyone's gonna be making fun of me."
Right.
Um, I mean, it's just, you know, Apple is, this is definitely not a new thing necessarily, but I do think that this is quite a breakthrough, at least with computing wise. I mean, just looking at what this chip offers, I mean, it's just crazy, that they could give this much performance so soon after their last device came out, and there's such a huge difference.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of using that as a segue, we can kind of walk into some of the pricing, the models, their specs and stuff like that. Like I had mentioned before, that MacBook Air that's starting at $1,000, which is a price point that's they're not far off from their price point that they've been working with the MacBook Air for a long time. But these are coming with their new M1 chip, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of solid state storage, and a 7-core GPU, which on paper doesn't sound that great. But with their new M1 chip, and since they have the GPU internal, these parts are able to communicate and work so well with each other that you're paying $1,000 for this machine that could easily outperform like an $1,800 to $2,000 laptop just casually, and all while not getting too hot. This keep in mind that the MacBook Air has a passive cooling system. There are no fans in the MacBook Air, and most people under heavy benchmarks on full load are measuring like 40 degrees Celsius on the keyboard, which is incredible. That's those are incredible thermals, and on top of that, it's boasting that 16 to 20 hour battery life. I believe the MacBook Air was 16 hours of video playback. The MacBook Pro is 20 hours of video playback, which is incredible. So, you're coming in. This all of a sudden has become probably the best, entry level laptop for performance that exists in the market right now, which is it's incredible. And same with the Pro, starting at $12.99, which is more expensive, but you get a little bit of a different form factor. They're not too different in weight. I think the MacBook Pro is 0.3 pounds heavier, but you get a little bit thicker of a form factor. You get that touch bar, and it comes with an 8-core GPU standard. And it makes sense for what you're paying for. And even the Mac Mini, which is probably another really big eye catcher, is they're coming in at $699, which is mimicking the performance of the MacBook Air. These are really, really crazy price points because, last year, even following this same price scheme, for the hardware that they were putting in them, they were overpriced machines. It didn't make sense. Although Apple software is great, they were still overpriced machines. But just from one chip, a rework of their architecture, and optimized apps, they've gone from overpriced machines to underpriced. Not even fairly priced, but underpriced machines. They could get more for what they're selling, and Luke, I'll transition to you there. What do you think about that? Your MacBook, your idea of a MacBook has just gone from these overpriced machines, where you can get more performance out of a different laptop for less, to now they're underpriced. We're college students. If you were buying a laptop for college, would this become like maybe an option for you?
This would probably be the laptop that I would resort to in the end, based off of performance and everything. And everyone likes the whole Apple aspect. But yeah, it's crazy. Usually when you think of Apple, you think, oh, yeah, it's overpriced. Their performance isn't as great as other things. But, for some reason, everyone loves Apple. And now that they're giving this performance at such a good price point, it's, unbeatable.
Right.
There's no other option really to look at now.
Yeah.
All the other companies have to be nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm right there with you. I've watched a couple videos of comparisons, and they're comparing these, brand new laptops, the MacBook Air, $1,000 entry level laptop, to, the $1,800 Dell XPS, which is like a top performer, in its class. So, crazy performance. And Drew, I'll ask you the same question. If you were, if we were just going into college and you were looking at buying a college laptop or even just a laptop for the future, is this all of a sudden an option for you? Are you considering this instead of, something else now?
Yeah, if I was a college student that needed a laptop, this would be a very real decision because they got the brand, they have the performance. I mean, the battery life is amazing. Um, but I think the reason that they haven't priced this, at their normal, not necessarily exorbitant pricing, but a higher price model is because I think they're probably making a move towards selling more like add-ons. Um, a lot of things like the Apple Pencil, or they probably see higher margins somewhere along the way there, and they probably expect like they're going to draw you in with that nice laptop. What was it, 699,
Yep.
somewhere around there.
For the
You know
Mac
they
Mini,
draw
yep.
Right, they draw you in with a product like that, and then next thing you know, you're buying the mouse. I think that definitely the lower price point is nice. The performance is great. And I think we're going to see a lot more add-ons offered as a result that you can purchase to either improve performance or just as quality of life increases.
Yeah, no, definitely. I like that you mentioned it because, we even started seeing that recently. If you go on to Apple and, go to checkout to get a MacBook Air, you can include the, pre-installed software like Final Cut Pro. You spend like $200 on that. There's like softwares that you can add on, and I know you're talking about like hardware stuff like Apple Pencil, but, this is, also something they're doing with software as well. It's like additional add-ons, accessories, stuff like that. And I don't know if that's, also working, to limit their ports because these devices only have two USB-C ports and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. I wonder if they're, limiting these ports on purpose, so you have to buy more accessories. You go to the manufacturer. So I think that's a really, interesting point. But overall, these are game-changing machines. I think this is opening a lot of eyes, and especially since this is first generation Apple Silicon. It's not like they've tried this before and have worked up and made some mistakes and learned from it. This is their first attempt, their first public attempt making chips ever, and they've not only exceeded expectations, but they've killed it. So a lot of people are looking towards the future, saying, imagine what M2 CPUs are going to look like. Imagine what M3 CPUs are going to look like. The advancement here is exciting. So this is a definitely an interesting topic to think about, especially when considering the new price point. So yeah, I think that's just about it for this podcast. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you in the next one.